Manchester United 2, Brentford 1. And not only was that 3 points, but it was a good performance for Manchester United, because sometimes we've won games and we're thinking, how did we win that? But today we won, we deserved to win. We probably deserved to win it 3-1. We were the better team, and that's what we want to see, progress within our performance. Now, the first half, the opening 15 minutes, it was not great, but I think from then onwards, we actually had quite a good game, particularly in the second half. Statistics obviously back up that performance: 1.47 XG to their 0.98, 23 shots, 11 shots on target. At half time, we were seeing that Southampton were 2-0 up and they'd scored more goals than us this season. But the second half response from United was really, really good. I thought it was fantastic display from Rashford, Garnacho, Hojlund. I thought the attack looked better. It was very vintage Erik Ten Hag first season. I think Ten Hag's gone back to what he was doing in the first season. It's a little bit more of a defensive approach, but it's a lot more compact and more control. I thought the second half performance from United was brilliant. And I think what was brilliant about that is it showed the players cared and they were giving everything. We were 1-0 down at half time. They know Ten Hag's job is on the line. And the energy that we came out with in that second half was absolutely phenomenal. Now, I'm going to be honest, I wasn't happy at halftime because we were 1-0 down, but I did say, look, it wasn't a good performance, but it wasn't a bad performance. We didn't deserve to be 1-0 down because we had limited Brentford, but we probably hadn't done enough to be 1-0 up, although Eriksen and Garnacho had chances. I said 0-0, 1-1 probably would have been a fair half-time score. It wasn't good enough. We went 1-0 down. It wasn't the end of the world, but because of our lack of goals, I wasn't sure if we are going to get back into it. But the response in the second half was fantastic. And I think the fact that the players came out and they gave everything, they're really trying to make it work under Erik Ten Hag. I think for me, I've never thought the players didn't try under Erik Ten Hag. I've just felt that they've lacked belief and couldn't do what he's asking them to do. Ten Hag went back to his first season tactics, and the players gave 100%. My only criticism is I would like to have seen Ahmad on the pitch, but Rashford and Garnacho did have very good games. But I want to see Ahmad get a little bit of time. I think he would really create for Hojlund. But look, the first 15 minutes was awful. Brentford had like 70% possession, 3 shots to our none. The Ligt got clattered. This wasn't going the right way. And then I actually thought the second bit of the first half was quite good, and we just were sort of unlucky to go 1-0 down. It was a corner. It was the only thing Brentford had between the 17th and 45th minutes, what they scored from. And I think Eriksen could have scored and Garnacho could have scored. And I think what I noticed with players like Hojlund, who didn't really have a pre-season, had been out for a while, I felt that every minute that went by in the game, he got better. And I felt that, he at first he got pushed around a little bit, and then he got used to the game and his surroundings. I think he was just moulding himself in. I thought Garnacho was lively from minute one and maybe should have put away some of his chances, but they weren't like easy chances to put away. But I think Rashford could have been better maybe in those scenarios, and I would have swapped them on the wings. But I'm glad that Ten Hag didn't swap them, because Rashford creating from the right-hand side was really good, and that resulted in that Garnacho goal. I thought Evans and De Ligt put in a really good performance at centre-back, but I thought Matthias De Ligt put in a monstrous, almost, you could argue man of the match level performance. You could honestly argue man of the match level performance. From Matthias De Ligt, that was fantastic. The response to, obviously, what happened versus Porto, absolutely phenomenal performance from De Ligt, especially with all the blood going down his head. He was unbelievable. It felt like he won everything, and the only time we conceded was when he was off the pitch. Like, he was the guy. I don't think Bruno was at his best, but he had an unreal assist, and I think that just shows the quality of Bruno Fernandes. I thought Rashford looked very, very good, and I actually thought Rashford was one of our best players. I didn't like how Ten Hag had him so deep on the right-hand side, but I think people underrate how good Rashford is creatively. There's this sort of saying Rashford's selfish, he can't create. He can create. He can be selfish, but Rashford has creative abilities. He's been like his assist numbers, that like when he's good is good. Like, he can create, and I think that's a misconception about Rashford. He's created 7 big chances in the league this season or something like that, but we've just not been clinical. I thought Licha did well at left back, and Garnacho was electric, and I agree with these points by Darnish here. That was excellent second half performance. Good tactical tweak to push the low up. Rashford generally creatively brilliant, with Garnacho on the other side. De Ligt imperious, and Casemiro performance. It felt like vintage, season 1 Casemiro performance it did, which was lovely to see. But I'm going to talk about my man of the match, Hojlund. I think he really grew into the game. I felt that he played some good balls into Garnacho down the left. I thought he really grew into the game. Hojlund delivered an impressive performance against Brentford today, showing notable progress in his game. He played with greater confidence and physical strength, using his body effectively to protect the ball and outmaneuver defenders. You can see where he might be learning from Ruud van Nistelrooy. Hojlund was actively involved in the team's build-up, consistently turning defenders, and even played some good passes down into Garnacho's left-hand side, creating opportunities for him. His well-deserved goal might be a pivotal moment in the season. He excited the match to applause, underlining his increasing impact on the team, is what I said. But what I really said is, He grew into the game. He showed the physicality to wrestle and hold off those defenders well. He turned away well. And I think Ruud van Nistelrooy's probably been working with him on that point of his game. I thought his hold-up was good. I thought his movement was good. And I think, his ability in the build-up was really good. And he started to influence play some really good balls into Garnacho down the left channel. And then his finishing was phenomenal. That was a phenomenal finish. A phenomenal Bruno flick and a phenomenal finish. Both goals were absolutely phenomenal. Brilliant ball from Rashford. Brilliant finish from Garnacho. And that goal was fantastic. If we look at Hojlund's all-round performance, 70% pass accuracy, 6 touches in the box, 5 ground duels contested, 3-1, 3 attempted take-ons, 2 successful, 2 shots, 1 goal. He was taking on players, he was playing passes, he was holding up the ball. He really grew into the game, and I think Hojlund looked a lot better. And I think Hojlund's very misunderstood. People want to criticise him because we spent 60 million, potentially rising to 72 million on him. So when you spend that much money on a striker, you expect a 20-goal striker. And I think it's really unfair on Hojlund because when you spend that much money on a striker, you expect a 20-goal striker. But we signed Hojlund as a 20-year-old kid who didn't even start week in, week out for Atalanta. He wasn't their first 2. There was 2 strikers ahead of Hojlund that they preferred for Atalanta to start. We signed a guy that was Atalanta's third-choice striker that got 9 goals in Serie A across the whole season. And we went to sign him for 60 million. And there was an expectation he's got to score 20 goals. He got 16 goals for Manchester United last season. 16 goals when he got limited service. He had some injuries as well. I think a 20-year-old kid getting 16 goals in his first season at United with limited service in one of our worst ever season last year, finishing 8th. With the pressure and everything on him. I think he had a good season last year. And I think people are so ready to be critical of Hojlund. But I think you need to remember, we should have signed Kane and then Hojlund to be the understudy. We didn't. We weren't organised. When you remember that we signed a 9-goal season guy who was third-choice striker for Atalanta, but somehow decided we're going to drop 70 million on him, rather than taking that out on Hojlund, take that on the board. He should have been a 40 million player. He should have been one for the future with an experienced striker to mould him in. He wasn't. But there's no doubt in my mind that there's a very good player in Hojlund. 20 goal contributions at United, 2 goals and 3 starts this season. He obviously scored the goal in the only game he started in pre-season versus Arsenal. You give Hojlund service and I guarantee he'll be a good player. Another player that had a really good game was Garnacho. I think at times in the first half he could have maybe done a little bit better, but I felt that his energy was causing a lot of issues. His running, his drive, his ability to want to make something happen brought so much. I think with Sancho, he'd get the ball, touch it, slow it down, pass it sideways. He wouldn't give the ball away, but he wouldn't do much with it. With Garnacho, yes, he sometimes gave the ball away, but he was really trying to make things happen. I think that electricity is what we needed. I think he had the most shots, 8. Maybe he could have scored another one of them. Most possession, 7th. Most shots on target, 5. He was running at people, trying to make things happen. I thought that Garnacho had a real positive impact on the game. He was really tiring out Brentford. And although I'd prefer Garnacho on the right and Rashford on the left, I think for this game it worked because Rashford's switch balls to Garnacho was fantastic. Hojlund found Garnacho that one time. I think there was a little bit of miscommunication between Garnacho and Hojlund, but I think it's just learning. They're inexperienced. They've got to learn to play together. They've got to learn the system, And I'm just going to say this now. Just because we won 2-1 versus Brentford, we might play our next game and be absolutely shite. I'm not saying that United are back. I'm not saying that, Ten Hag in, he's going to save us. We're going to have a good season. But what I'm saying is you can only judge the game in front of you. This was a good and promising performance versus Brentford. If we could do what we've done in the second half in this game in the next 7, 8, 9, 10 games, then Ten Hag would be in a much stronger position than he is right now. 100%. Continuing on, United faithful said this: give Rashford and Garnacho their flowers. They both played really well today. That cross from Rashford and the finish from Garnacho, beautiful link up. I agree. And Robbo said this: can't speak highly enough of Marcus Rashford. He's having a great season. That's only getting better. I believe anyone who's actually watched him would find it hard to disagree. If you've watched Rashford without an agenda, this anti-Rashford agenda, you know that he's had a good season. Today he trapped back. He worked really hard off the ball. I thought he had a good performance today. I actually think he's had a good start to the season. I know he hasn't got crazy numbers yet, but I think he's actually had a much better start to the season than people think. But if Rashford does one thing wrong or has one bad game, that's all people want to talk about. So that's what all the attention goes to. If you get away from the agendas and the media narrative, it's not been amazing, but Rashford has had a good season and is growing and getting better. He looks a lot better than he did this time last year. And as Devil's DNA said this, Rashford has already created a few big chances this year and has hit 7 assists in a year 5 times, 7+ assists in a year 5 times in his career. He isn't a creative in a visionary playmaker sense, but he's got a very consistent pass/cross execution on him that we should utilise more. That's what Devil's DNA said. They then said this: as I always say, Rashford's cross execution is very underrated. He's consistently able to create for his teammates, even if he's not creating the goal. Against Brentford was another example of this. He created to the Garnacho twice, one for the goal, one for another opportunity. His crossing and creativity was good. Last year, Rashford created the most for Hojlund in the team and was leading the EPL for SCAs from take-ons at one point. This year he's created the most for Xerxes. He's among the best players for big chances created. There is a more creative player in Rashford. So even though I didn't like him dropping deeper, I think Rashford is more creative than he gets credit for. Ligt, monster performance. You can argue Licht's up there for man of the match. I thought he was absolutely phenomenal. 3 out of 3 tackles won, 3 out of 4 ground duels won, 4 passes into the final third. I thought he was technically really good on the ball, breaking the lines. I thought he was brilliant, especially with the blood and everything in the air. I thought it was a fantastic performance. They could only score when he was off the pitch, and I think had he been on the pitch, I don't think they'd have scored that. I thought Ligt was a monster performance. I thought the midfield was a lot more compact in the second half. It was giving first season vibes. I had a lot of worries about that, but Ten Hag went back to his first season tactics, was a bit more defensive, compacted the midfield. It worked today versus Brentford. I thought Eriksen, really grew into the game. I wasn't sure in the first half. I thought the second half, the midfield from being non-existent in the opening 20 minutes to having a really good game in the end. So yeah, happy days. Smash a like, smash a subscribe. Let me know your thoughts. Let's hope we continue this on. Bye.